With every great Stephen King adaptation, there will always be a failure, and 2017 was a prime example of that. Comparing the massive success of It to the huge failure of the Mist adaptation, you can't really go any further with that. But the question is, why? Because The Mist seemed to have everything going for it, with a very, very appropriate $23 million production budget, and it being shown on a channel that had recently brought out Ash vs Evil Dead. Another big positive is of course Francis Conroy, an American Horror Story alumni, being one of the leads, but nothing seemed out of the ordinary until you look at the show's creator, Christopher Torp, as well as a lot of the things that went on during production. Now, I'm not going to be the person who blames this entirely on a single person, but when someone's leading the project and has never done anything similar to it, it can be a big problem, and that's the show's creator, who was apparently on the rise, at least according to his IMDb scores, and Torp should seem like a very good choice until you notice a glaring problem. He's never done horror before, and even worse, judging by this adaptation, he didn't even seem to know the book that it was fully based on. Now, I'm not saying that people who've never done horror can't. 2018's Suspiria and Halloween are very good examples of how well horror can be done from an outsider. But this is a massive disadvantage just from the offset, not really understanding the genre you're meant to be coming from, not even fully understanding the book you're basing your program on, and especially when the creator has no idea what to do, it creates a massive red flag from the start. Now, for both the story of the original book and 2007 film adaptation, they are really close to each other minus that ending, and I'd honestly say it's one of the closest Stephen King adaptations we've ever had. So, to stretch a 130-page book into a 10-episode season, there's a lot of changes that have to occur, and one of those, for some reason, included adding the laziest plot device ever made: rape. In the very first episode, we meet our main family, whose younger daughter Alex is sexually assaulted at a party, with the lead suspect being a character whose only personality traits is that he's a jock and he likes Alex. The subplot is also stretched throughout all 10 episodes, with so many twists, turns, and, spoiler alert, it has literally nothing to do with The Mist itself. Not even in the slightest, no matter how much the show tries to make it connect. It's bad when one of the lead plot points is not even centered around The Mist, you know, what the show's named after, and instead we get some bad and downright insulting acting with very poor dialogue from a writer who has obviously never been around people who've been sexually assaulted. Simple fact is, people do not react like this. It just doesn't happen like that. The rape plot also drastically reduces what the characters can do, forcing them all to be stereotypes and one-dimensional to fit that situation. Speaking of which, now, I've seen The Mist twice, all 10 episodes twice, and I honestly cannot tell you any of the characters' names without googling it, since most of them are that bland. The mother Eve used to be a slut, so she overprotects her daughter Alex, who ended up getting raped. Kevin, who was meant to be the fun dad, but doesn't actually do anything that fun. Mia, who used to be a junkie. Not Brian, who has amnesia and used to be in the army. Jay, who is the jock guy, only Trey. His dad Connor, who is a very corrupt sheriff who turns evil so damn quickly it's concerning how he's meant to be the law. Adrian, who is a bisexual metalhead, so therefore, according to the showrunners, must be evil. And Natalie, who is a more hippie version of Mrs. Carmody, who does appear in the show, but she also dies instantly in the first episode. So, you know, just fuck the book and the movie, since Mrs. Carmody means nothing to them. Now, if you think these descriptions of a character is brief, that is genuinely all I know about them before The Mist came, and even after The Mist has already taken over. And when it comes to Alex, she literally could have just been an NPC in a Bethesda game before it all, as I literally know nothing about her. The only thing that she's ever established properly in the show is that she was assaulted. And the worst part is, none of these characters evolve at all apart from Adrian and Natalie, as Adrian's turns out to be pure evil, and Natalie, who was the kindest person in the show, is suddenly now murdering people left, right and centre for no real reason. All the main cast are just there. We get some hints at character development with Kevin killing people, not Brian getting some memories back, and Mia seeing her dead mother, but all three of these scenes that these moments actually happening have very little context. I do understand spreading a storyline to fit multiple episodes, but this show spreads them so thinly, I forget whose character is who, meaning that very few people who enjoyed season 1 enough, we'll never see it actually come to fruition, as season 2 has been cancelled completely. There's also a very interesting quote-unquote amount of supporting characters such as Father Romanov, Kyle, Shelley and Vic, who all come across as the most one-dimensional cartoony people we have ever met. The religious father who serves no other role than to show God has forsaken them, Kyle is a closet homophobe, and Shelley is an extremely overacted grieving mother, with Vic being a sociopathic gamer who doesn't understand that death isn't funny. They all just come across as afterthoughts, with the only good supporting characters being Gus, who is a semi-antagonist who has the best wishes, just bad execution, as well as Kimmy, but her role is basically just to be a friend of Eve and die at the end of the season so we feel sad. As mentioned, Mrs. Carmody is horrifically written. She literally appears, complains with her child, then leaves and dies. A security officer and an altar boy. They're just so bland, I can't even remember their names, and I can't fully Google it. It's difficult to even explain why they're so bad, but just a simple fact, I don't even remember what they really did after watching the show twice explains all you need to know. Now, I'm not saying that when it comes to horror you need to have the best characters in the world as long as the horror is good, but you do need to at least have some characterization, and it's difficult to enjoy a horror drama when the characters are this bad, especially when all of them, apart from the main family, are evil. No, I'm not joking here. Everyone else suddenly turns evil throughout the show. Now, let's just make a quick list of all the antagonists in this 10-episode series. We have Romanov, the altar boy, Natalie, Gus, Kyle, Shelley, the security guard, Adrian, Connor, and a crazy patient, with Mia, Kevin, and not Brian, some of our main protagonists, doing some really bad, horrible things throughout the show, but since they're protagonists, we have to forgive them, with Kevin and not Brian killing people for no real reason, and Mia being a thief who may have murdered her mother. We really don't know that much else about them. What's most annoying here is that every character I've mentioned starts off as a protagonist, quickly turning evil for no apparent reason except that the previous antagonist has been killed off, and has to change from being a good character such as Kyle to very weird people for literally no reason in a matter of minutes. I understand that the idea of desperate people do desperate things is a good concept, but some of these character swaps come entirely out of nowhere, such as Connor and Nat killing everyone in the church because reasons? And the absolute worst part of the plot twist involves Adrian, which is honestly my biggest point for why this show really went off the rails. As stated with the story differences, rape is a very large narrative running throughout this show, and it's established from the first episode it was Jay who assaulted Alex. But notice how I left him out of the antagonists. Well, it's because of some dialogue which isn't very clear at all in episode 8, reveal that Adrian is actually a psychopath who needs medication to keep himself in check, and he rapes his best friend so she wouldn't leave him because he loves her. What the fuck? That's not how mental illness works. This twist is not even hinted at until episode 7, so we've had 6 episodes of building up a fake character, which we've gotten to care about, then suddenly a crazy guy says he's pure evil, and the plot suddenly shifts, so everyone was evil and it's hardly even a hint. My biggest issue with this character swap is that throughout the show, Adrian has been shown to be a very caring but resourceful guy, who can read people very clearly, such as Kyle in episode 5, and can even manipulate people at times, such as Romanov in episode 3, but he only does this to protect those that he cares about, such as helping his little group on multiple occasions. Nowhere is it hinted that he is mentally unwell, or even has a bad bone in his body. Nowhere throughout the first 6 episodes is he shown to be a sinister person. Now, I do understand that the writers probably wanted to keep it a surprise, but giving no hints at all makes a bad plot twist. Look at Fight Club, for instance. A twist that's subtle, but is also present throughout the entire story without giving anything away, which on a second viewing changes the way you see the film. Same thing with Scream. You don't know who the killer is, and you don't really understand who it could be, then after the twist happens, if you watch it through a second time, you notice a lot more hints and tricks that have been done without focusing on it too clearly. Now, compare that to Adrian, who suddenly shoots his dad, starts cutting himself, and tries to kill Kevin after saying he assaulted her. It doesn't make any sense, and without any foreshadowing and development, the twist seems lazy and like the writers just wanted the twist to be blamed on the person who likes metal, which is a stereotype that hasn't been relevant in many years unless you're a very strong conservative or Republican. Other notable twists which make absolutely no sense include not Brian being an army captain despite the fact the army were chasing after him, Kevin's brother being in love with Eve, the mole group turning into murderers like that without any Mrs. Carmody pushing them over the edge like in the original movie, Nat being the voice of the mist by being able to walk through the mist multiple times per instant, and then the mist suddenly killing her with no context and not really explaining anything apart from Frances Conroy obviously wanting to get out of her contract. And finally, the fact that the sheriff is actually Alex's father, so the girl that she likes is her brother. Granted, it's the only twist which had foreshadowing very early on, but it's still a bad twist which just comes across as awkward and funny. Almost as funny as how the writers change the mist to do whatever the episode needs, which yes, is a thing in this show. Now, as stated, I've watched through the show twice, and with each episode running for 45 minutes, that means that I've watched around about 15 hours of this show, and I still have no idea what the mist does. No clue. The first few episodes, it creates insects or something similar to the original film and the book, kind of hinting at the Lovecraftian style, but then shadow creatures appear for like one episode and murder a child, then cause hallucinations, and finally becomes weird tentacle monsters. Like, what? This just backs up my idea that the creators didn't read the book or watch the film, since all the mist is, in both those adaptations, is that the air that these creatures breathe. Instead, we get this really convoluted story about the Black Spring and how it came years ago because a girl got raped, so obviously it has something to do with that, but as I said earlier, it literally doesn't, rendering the rape plot even more useless. The origin appears to be the same as the book, coming from the Arrowhead Project, but that's all we know, and judging by the end of the first season, the Mist's origin was going to be revealed in the second season, which causes an even larger issue. Since the rules of the Mist haven't been established, we have no idea what's going on, and without a second season, we'll never know. In the original book and film adaptation, the Mist is literally just air that creatures from another dimension use to breathe like oxygen, with the creatures themselves being very Lovecraftian styled for the movie, and the monsters have some basis of real-life creatures such as the spiders, wasps and other birds, along with some more abstract creatures such as a crab and whatever the hell that giant thing is. The point is they're scary because they're real enough to associate to ourselves, but not so similar that it makes it cheap. The TV show gets rid of that completely, and it's normal boring insects, which looks cheap. And they get really big at certain points for no real explained reason, such as the butterfly sequence, as well as leeches, because obviously the guy with a huge stitch needed to die in some cool way. Just, the creatures are boring, and the showmakers must have known that their work would be compared to the film. So why dumb down one of the most praised parts of it? The budget wouldn't have been much different, and the designs were already there to use. It was literally given to them through the same production company, and it would establish the rules of the Mist. We still don't know why or how it's telepathic with ghosts, what the shadowy creatures are, or what exactly makes the Mist stronger, and how the army guys are, quote, feeding it. The show doesn't care to explain anything, instead leaving it for a second season, making the first season feel more like a pilot than a first true season of a programme, which is even worse when you consider how much of the plot is completely useless. During The Mist, there are 8 clear plots and or location stories. The Mist itself, obviously, it's meant to be the driving force of the show. Kevin finding his family, the rape incident, Natalie's journey, not Brian's history of Arrowhead, with the mall and hospital and church settings rounding us off. Oh, and I guess Mia's backstory, but that can literally be written out and wouldn't affect anything to do with the programme as it stands today. Now, if you break all these different points apart, you see how hollow this show actually is when it comes to the story. The rape incident is literally only there to cause drama, and honestly, could be cut out without much issue to the actual Mist storyline. It'd make no difference to the actual Mist itself. For the hospital scenes, there's an attempt at character development, but it falls very flat because they're just establishing stuff we already know, and since there's not much there to begin with, it doesn't elaborate on much. Natalie's journey kills off the church guys, so that's gone too, and her own story ends when she dies, with very little actually impacting the story, except Jay's death, which could easily have been changed anyway to him still dying saving Alex. That essentially leaves us with 3 main storylines, which are also the most underused ones. We don't know anything about The Mist or Arrowhead, and for a TV show called The Mist, you'd think that would be top priority, but apparently not. The only story that was actually focused on and impacted anything was the Mall and finding his family. Showing society falling apart, and even though it's done poorly, it's integral to getting all the characters together, rounding up Kevin's story and rounding up all the other subplots running throughout the show. The family dynamic is okay. It's probably one of the best parts of the show, seeing how many horrible things and how many difficult things Kevin has to go through just to get back to his daughter and wife. It is good in that context. But since this is 10 episodes long, that can't be the only thing that really holds a show together. So essentially, what do we have here when it comes to plot? We have lots of padding, a cheap way to get characters from location to location to show off all the cool things The Mist can do without actually explaining it, with most of the stories being added just to pad the runtime and are either quickly forgotten about or just cut completely halfway through. It's a big waste of time, and honestly is infuriating when the main focus of the show, The Mist, is left for a second season, which is one of the most baffling things you can imagine for a first season of a show. Now, I could keep ranting on about this forever, but I'm pretty sure you don't want to hear that, so I'm just going to point out some of the things about this show which really, really sucked, but weren't big enough to put their own little sections for. Alex goes face to face with a shadow creature and survives with absolutely zero context. Vic survives being in the mist for about a day with no incident. The army are feeding people to a cloud. Jay gets eaten by the mist because Connor sacrificed him after some crazy lady told him to do so. The army people hang themselves out of fear for getting caught, but when an army guy is caught, it's quickly forgotten about. The mall's layout changes very often with continuity. It is really damn bad. Mia and Brian's sex scene, Kevin's mass murder, and finally, Mia's mom. Ghost mom. This show really sucked. I think my main problem with this show is that it could have been brilliant. By focusing on characters not in the book or film, it allowed the creators to do whatever they wanted, while centering around the same apocalyptic event, The Mist. But they missed the mark so badly, it's painful to watch. I'm not saying with any of this that no one involved in the project cared, because obviously they did. You wouldn't do a program like this if you didn't care. But you don't spend so much time gathering a team and working on something for so long without at least a little bit of love. The problem with this show is that it's so bloated, with so many characters, so many locations, so many plot devices, and so much false drama, it takes away the only good parts of the show, the family aspect and trying to understand The Mist. The chemistry, I will state, between a lot of the actors is really good. They are solid at what they're given. They're not given much, similar to the new season of Doctor Who, but what they are given, they do everything they can to be as good as possible. With mostly good performances, in all honesty. The good moments of story and the brilliant special effects really do make it so the show is at least tolerable to watch throughout all the shit. Honestly, if this show didn't add so many characters every 10 seconds, maybe the ones left would be entertaining to watch. If they focused on only a few storylines, maybe it would be a lot clearer. And if they focused a lot more on The Mist itself and how this new interpretation of it actually works, people may have supported it more. But since everything is so watered down with one-dimensional characters, too many plots, and The Mist literally changing its rules every episode, then maybe this show would have been in its third season by now. But as where things stand, it's never coming back. In all honesty, I do hope one day that someone creates a new show centered around The Mist. Hell, I even hope it's the people who made this one. Maybe they can learn from their mistakes, but no matter what, this version of The Mist is a bad TV show, and that is fundamentally why The Mist was a failure. Thank you for watching. I know this one's another different one, but I thought I'd just get this video essay out there because I watched this show like a couple of years ago, back in 2018, and I actually wrote this original thing after I watched it because I was that angry. I rewrote it, of course, because I watched it again to get my mind like back on track with a show, but oh my god, I've literally just finished watching it and I regret it so much. It's so bad. I have no idea how someone watched this and went, yeah, that's fine to air. Like, holy shit. I did enjoy some aspects, like I said. I think a lot of the characters who we got to know a bit better, they did do well when they're on screen together, but on their own they were just so one-dimensional, you couldn't think past it. And honestly, that rape plot. I saw a post at one point, I don't remember what it was about, but it was something like, if you're writing a movie, think carefully. Sorry, no, if you're writing a horror movie, think carefully. Does your plot have rape in it? If the answer is yes, can you think of anything apart from rape that would have the same impact? This show didn't even need that, but yeah, it still had the fucking rape plot. And like I said, it was worthless. Oh god, this show. But anyway, if you do enjoy this, please be sure to like and subscribe. I'll probably make another one of this at some point because it was fun to basically watch a bad show and ramble about it. But yeah, once again, my Godzilla ranking video has been delayed to next week. It will actually be coming out next week, I promise. Pinky promise. So until then, I hope you all have an amazing week and I'll see you next Friday. Goodbye.